Othercide absolutely took me by surprise in the best of ways. Set within a frozen realm between reality and unreality called the Dark Corner, you command armies of your daughters to fight the twisted creatures created by suffering. Just as you push against the flow of these monsters, they'll push you right back, killing your daughters one after another. Within the first few minutes of launching the game, you're even given a message telling you that you're meant to lose. That's how you know you're in for a good time. With each loss comes more strength in the form of remembrances, artifacts that give your daughters buffs to help them in their fight against suffering. Created by French indie studio Lightbulb Crew, Othercide offers a unique experience that I honestly wish I could relive for the first time all over again. Even if I set the game down for 3 years initially, but don't worry about it. But before we get too far, I believe introductions are in order. Hello, my name is Alexaria, and welcome to my library. A somewhat dilapidated one at that, but it's a work in progress. Some time ago, I saw an article telling how, and I quote, Steam users have $19 billion on games that they've never played. I personally am guilty of this as well, as I have many untouched or otherwise unfinished stories. I have since made it my mission to rectify that, to finally clear my library. With that in mind, I chose Othercide as my first endeavor, as it piqued my interest ever since its release back on Steam in July of 2020. With its monochrome aesthetic, turn-based gameplay, and absolutely amazing soundtrack, I was pulled right in. Little did I know that my first choice would utterly consume my life. For centuries, Mother has protected the veil, preventing it from shattering. Her journey has led her to the deserted streets of the city, rotted by the plague where a greater threat awaits. In the beginning, we play as Mother, the greatest warrior to walk the earth, as she cuts her way through legions of monsters to reach the child. Like herself, the child is a chosen one, a human bound to an entity from unreality known as an other. Unreality mirrors reality, separated by a veil that keeps back the others, these deity-like beings that embody various concepts and emotions. While Mother is bound to memory, the child is bound to suffering. Eventually, we're able to find the child, but they're not too happy to see us. Having been forced to bear immense suffering in the past, the child wishes to spread that suffering to the rest of the world. In a veil-shattering yell, the child tears the fabric between realities, destroying anything within its wake. The city was destroyed, the veil fractured. Thousands of souls perished, swallowed by the void. Within this void, the child brought about suffering, though merely an egg, a nucleus of pure greed that awaited only one thing: to finally exist. Time and space converged. Reality and unreality were on the edge of destruction. For the first time, an other was close to breaking through. But we can't allow that to happen. Though our body is no more, our memory is able to bring about images from our past in the form of daughters to fight against the agents of suffering. And thus were they trapped in an everlasting loop. From recollection to recollection, daughters of the Red Mother die only to rise again. Finding ourselves now within the Dark Corner, this liminal space frozen in time between reality and unreality, our war against suffering begins. The very fabric of reality is in danger, and only we are able to save it. Using our newly acquired daughters, memories from various points in Mother's life, we go out on missions, destroying the abomination suffering throws our way to stop us. The missions range from a standard hunt, where you're tasked to eliminate all the enemies within a space, to rescue missions where you escort bright souls out of suffering's reach. These bright souls are unborn daughters who have yet to be tied to mother's memories, usually indicated by the red scarf worn by the rest. While looking amazing, these scarves also serve as a health bar, the end of it gradually losing color and graying out until nothing remains. During these missions, you take control of 3 different daughters, all having their own roles in combat. First, and my personal favorite, is the Blade Master, taken from the memories of Mother's time with her old master. They're your main source of damage, able to defeat most enemies within a single strike. Next, the Shield Bearers are your tanks, modeled in the image of Mother's time in the war. They control the battlefield, forcing monsters to face them so your other daughters can maneuver around and flank them, dealing bonus damage. Finally, the Soul Slingers are your ranged support daughters, taken from the memories of Mother's time as a bounty hunter of sorts, traveling the world to hunt nightmare creatures. Able to shoot from a distance, they're able to drop enemies that the rest of your daughters might otherwise have trouble reaching. They're also able to speed up your fellow daughters, making them a necessity in most missions later on. The enemies within Othercide are all abominations created by the child through their other suffering. Using his past traumas as a catalyst, the child has gone about creating all sorts of horrors. Some based off of how he sees the people around him, and others taking on a much more horrific appearance. Creatures from his nightmares made manifest. Through the course of various missions, you command your daughters to strike down these abominations while doing your best to avoid any sort of damage. For you see, in Othercide, there is no healing. At least there isn't if you play on Nightmare like I did, because I am here to suffer. Instead, your daughters must be sacrificed to each other in order to restore their vitality. As such, compounding mistakes are often fatal. In each turn, you're given AP, starting at 100, but through various buffs you're able to get more. You can move and attack all you want, but once you use more than 50, your daughter is slowed down greatly on the timeline. Because of this, it's important to strategize when to have your daughters burst down certain enemies and when to hold back. Things get especially interesting once more and more enemies are added to the fray. There's this great risk-reward feeling to it. I've personally found that it speeds things up quite significantly if you go ahead and burst down the last several enemies of each mission, just as a treat. Throughout the first era, the Plague, we're constantly being watched over by the surgeon, an evil doctor that performed thousands of tests upon the child. Having been bound to suffering, the child was unable to die, even after contracting the plague. This fascinated the surgeon, pushing him to conduct countless experiments on the child, all in his own twisted attempt to find a cure for the plague. Human madness knows no limit, as long as it has a cause to feed on. The surgeon was convinced of the righteousness of his own actions and would have been able to use logic to justify any of the deadly drugs he injected into the helpless child. Blinded by his thirst for success, his science still could not save him from disgrace. Now corrupted to his substantive marrow, the surgeon is nothing more than an empty shell of harmful convictions steeped in hatred. Thrown into an arena lined with scissors and various sharp instruments sticking out of the terrain in every which direction, we come face to face with the surgeon himself. And oh my god, what is that health? Flanked by attendants, shielding him from our every attack, we're forced to whittle them down while the surgeon himself slices at us with his 2 giant scissor blades. One by one, the attendants drop until none remain. But this only proves to anger the surgeon as the real fight begins. Slashing and carving into our daughters, we trade blows as both sides refuse to back down. However, it's not long before it seems like the battle will come to an end, and just as either side is on the cusp of breaking, we fail. That's it. It's over. We've lost. Is this the end? Oh no. We've only just begun. With each defeat, we come back stronger. With every misstep, a chance to learn. With every failure, a new opportunity. Though we may get knocked down time and time again, we will always return, ready to strike down the surgeon once and for all. For all those years spent experimenting on the child, for all the thousands of tests and operations, we pay it all back in kind. By the time we're done, nothing will remain.
Who are you to question? The plague will kill us all. Each cut brings us closer to the cure.
They spoke lies, little one.
Too little to fight. They cut me because I could not die.
We will fight for you. Release this memory to me.
We shall find a cure for this plague, whatever the cost may be. Child or no, it remains an experiment. As the surgeon is slain, Mother goes about taking away the child's memory of the pain he'd suffered under them. All those hours, days, weeks, years of torment, agony, it's all removed to ease the child's suffering. Though now that they're out of the way, we're now faced with a new adversary, the Deacon. Arguably the central figure to the child's suffering, as they'd adopted the child, taken them in, and isolated them to a cellar prison after they'd contracted the plague. Within this isolation, the child's only solace came in the form of the maid. Also orphaned and taken in by the Deacon, although as a servant, she consoled the child, humming along to a music box in the form of a lullaby. Do not fear, I will be here. Your pain is falling away. Through this time, the child had come to love the maid, seeing her as the single positive influence in the sea of horror. The single light within this darkness he'd come to know so well. In her frequent visits to the child, she vowed that one day they would be free, and that there was still hope for a better future. Someday we shall be free, I promise. We shall go wherever you wish, for no one will ever control us again. However, this would unfortunately not last for long. The Deacon, having learned of the maid's influence on the child, trapped her within the cell with the child. In such close proximity, it was only a matter of time before she too caught the plague and died within the child's arms. It was here where the child fully embraced the suffering other. Anyways, with the Deacon comes a host of new horrors for our daughters to face, some of which being the worm, larva, and infected. Unlike the human-like horrors of the surgeon, these are all horribly deformed and disfigured, amalgamations of various appendages thrown together in something that only might have once been human. They have a sort of clay-like quality to them, as if sculpted from the clay within the very cell that the child once occupied. Each of these enemies brings new mechanics to the table, larger area of effect abilities, abilities that root your daughters in place, and others that shield their fellow enemies from damage, while also sapping the armor of our daughters. So, all in all, we're having a great time. We're also introduced to new missions, one of which being the Ritual, in which you're tasked with destroying a lost soul, souls that we're too late to save and are forever lost. They're unable to bear the weight of suffering, and if left alive for too long, spell doom for all daughters involved. Personally though, I never really had to deal with that bit, as in most of these it's rather easy to just rush the little guy and bully him. Two others that I'd failed to mention previously are the penance and survival missions. Well, survival is a bit self-explanatory. In penance missions, your daughters must dispatch nightmare creatures to earn points, and after collecting so many, they're able to leave. Just be careful to let them leave at roughly the same time to make sure that none are ultimately left behind. All through these missions, we're met with various comments from the deacon that honestly make my skin crawl.
Only a devil will block our holy sacrament. With those legs, those lips.
Though these just make it all the more satisfying when we finally meet him within his chapel to bring an end to his worship. If it wasn't clear by now, the deacon is a revolting individual, to put it lightly. During his fight, he'll make pig-like squeals, becoming the pig the child saw him to be. His features are all covered in clay, almost making it look like he's melting, in my opinion. His upper body is also riddled with keyholes, most notably in his chest and in the back of his head. In his hand, a giant key, and along his robes, hundreds more. As the game puts it, a Pandora's box of his own sins. Throughout his fight, he'll switch between putting daughters in confession, where he'll isolate the furthest daughter and root all the others, and then preparing for said confession. While preparing, he's shielded and attacks whoever's closest, but once he's got his sights set on one daughter in particular, only a good chunk of damage will put a stop to his charge. If that condition isn't met, you're in for a bad time. Alternating between these two modes, it's a bit of a struggle to get damage onto him while also mitigating damage you receive. Even now, after finishing the game and fighting him several times, I'll admit that he's one boss I really just don't understand. Honestly though, that's probably because I just kind of brute forced him every time. Whoops.
I prayed for guidance, and a voice inside led me to take him in, care for him. But the child was a plague. His prison was just.
There was no justice here. No compassion.
He broke her. My only friend. He took my father's role, but not his place.
Why couldn't he love me?
He loved no one. Release yourself from his prison. Give this memory to me.
You want to save me?
We will, child.
Why would you help me?
You deserve none of this, child. I need—
Liar! You gave the other your life. You want memory to rule instead.
Memory remembers itself at last. We know you're there. We've always known. Stop hiding behind this ghost.
Her life is mine now.
Wake up, dear friend. Take the life I give you. Be like you used to be. Be happy.
Mother now takes away the suffering that the deacon caused. All those years of neglect and abuse suffered under them. But now we have another problem. Taking a portion of memory for himself, the child brings back his dear friend, the maid. On first meeting her, we're simply told, "Will it never end? Please, let me die." As before with the deacon, we're also met with more friends to deal with, looking much like the surgeon's minions, but much stronger. Most notably of these new additions, though, is the Reaper. They're just like the hunter that had come before, but twice as dangerous. Otherwise, it's business as usual, until just like the others, it's time to deal with her memory as well. Surrounded by statues grieving her loss, we're met with the image of the child holding on to the maid's lifeless body, the final event that pushed him into accepting suffering. In the center, several statues looking like the maid, all with shards of glass jutting out from them. There's gotta be some sort of symbolism here, but again, I'm not the best at picking that up. My personal guess would be maybe something along the lines of she was taken in by the church, but ultimately betrayed by it, as the deacon was generally just a horrible person. Like shards of stained glass, typical of most churches, just piercing through their heart. The maid uses a lot of reactionary abilities. She'll use interrupts to counterattack certain abilities while also gaining buffs after your daughters perform certain actions like moving or attacking. In addition to all these vows and types of love, you're led to fight as if solving a puzzle, where only certain methods yield results. It's honestly pretty satisfying once you get it down, but straight up punishing when you get it wrong. Remember earlier when I said there were only 3 types of daughters? Well, I might have lied.
Forgive me for leaving your side. I thought I could bear witness to the child's soul. My heart bled for the girl who rotted, abandoned in the cellar. I lived her pain, what suffering put upon her. Her descent has transformed me, forced me to grow and birth a new daughter.
In a sort of strange alliance with the maid, Mother is able to use the maid's memories along with her own to birth the Scythe Dancer. These daughters gradually go stronger as the fight goes on, stealing armor from her enemies to use for herself. That, and she generally just slaps all around.
What is kindness? She taught me. What is love? She showed me. What is loss? She died for me. I made her sick, and she died in my arms.
I gave her life to bring her back, and you killed her again!
In defeating the maid, Mother takes her memory as well, and the loss associated with it. Now, all the child has left is anger. Anger which is soon to be pointed at us.
Suffering is close now. They hurt me. They abandoned me. They made me. And I'll make suffering pay them back. They won't ignore me now.
Now, within the child's domain, we're faced with the full force of his creations. Creations brought about by the very daughters we've been fighting him with. Introducing the corrupted daughters, all mimicking the abilities of our own, but much faster and stronger. While the Reaper put fear in me right from its introduction, these daughters had a different effect. There's something about seeing the twisted versions of all the daughters you'd used up until now, turning their weapons against you, that makes your life flash before your eyes. And for many of my daughters, that's exactly what happened. When you're not ready for the corrupted daughters, they are absolutely brutal. Giving in to his anger and thirst for revenge against the world, the child allows suffering to take him. All around, you're surrounded by crying faces lining the walls of a flooded cellar, the very room the child had been trapped in for all those years. Behind him, Suffering's symbol has been carved into the forehead of one of these faces. The vast amount of empty space in the middle gives it all this incredibly lonely feeling, as if driving home that he's truly alone down here. Except for us, of course. Using his pain as a weapon, the child unleashes massive AoE attacks, usually covering a good chunk of his arena. His pained shrieks are now given form, spreading his own suffering onto others. Normally, he'll play nice and give you a good long while to get your daughters out of it. But sometimes he'll teleport around, setting several of your daughters right within his sights. Though this teleporting is only triggered after he loses so much health, so I guess that one's kind of on me. Sorry, Candide, or Condide. I don't know, languages are fun. Reduced to just 2 daughters, we're only just able to claim victory over the child. All that's left is to free him from himself.
Is this me? No. Angry, yes, but this is too much. Too much hurting. Gone, is it? Who are you?
No one, but what I could be. A mother?
Don't hurt me. Don't.
Never, my heart.
End this spectacle. You don't belong among souls. Recall who you are, memory. Join our kin. Serve me as I break the veil and claim reality as my own. Or you will understand what suffering is.
You have no place here. This child has chosen peace.
I no longer need anyone. Your daughter's war has fueled the suffering I need to enter reality.
No.
I must thank you for this broken creature memory. With her, I build my new home. My paradise. Come, brother. I am waiting.
With the child now saved from suffering's grasp, the only thing that stands in our way is suffering itself. Though still just an egg of sorts, it's only a matter of time before it hatches. It'll take everything we've got to take down an other, even with its current state. On top of that, I can feel our own strength waning. After the fight with the child, our daughters have been left weak and injured. Running on fumes, we rush ourselves to the day we can finally face suffering themselves. Along the way, we're met with the final enemy, this Hope Breaker. The strongest of all the corrupted daughters, the Hope Breaker uses a variety of attacks taken from every kind of daughter. To be honest, I didn't really get to see much of what they could do, as each time I saw them, I focused them down immediately. They legitimately scared me. Before long, we're able to make it to Suffering's lair. The arena itself seems different from what we're used to up to this point. It's much more lively. It very much gives the impression that ultimately all Suffering wants is to just exist. An open field flooded by the rain. At the topmost section, a pile of our daughter's corpses, all feeding a large white rose, from which Suffering's seed makes itself known. While in their current form, all they're able to do against us is conjure up corrupted daughters, using our fallen as fuel for their army. Pitting daughter against daughter, the fight starts out absolutely brutal. My only saving grace was the scythe dancers doing their best to imitate a blender. Had it not been for them, this would have been over before it even began. Steadily, the stream of corrupted daughters becomes easy enough to handle that we can set our sights purely upon this nucleus of Suffering. In a long fight, spanning the majority of the arena, we brought down daughter after daughter, giving it our all to finally put Suffering down. Though with each small victory, we were also being whittled down to nothing. This was quickly turning into a war of attrition, as our daughters gradually lost more and more health, being reduced to just a fraction of what they once were. It was clear that if we were to win this, we needed to act fast. Once brought down to a certain amount of health, Suffering begins the hatching process. It's now or never. In a desperate attempt to destroy Suffering, I gave them everything I could, and just when it appeared that we were about to fall short, Desire fired the final shot. Suffering had been defeated. Or had it?
From a single seed, I am born. From your corpses, my body. From your suffering, my triumph.
Oh, you thought that was the end. That's cute. No, that was only the introduction to the true battle, Suffering's true self. Given shape by our daughters, Suffering reveals itself at last, and they're going to make sure that they are the last thing our daughters see. Suffering has an absolutely oppressive atmosphere. Not only do they take their turns in quick succession, but on every other turn, they delay all of your daughters. What little vitality we had left was quickly snuffed out before we so much as had a chance to react. That was until they weren't able to kill my last daughter because of all the armor that they've gotten up to this point. So we got to see them play musical chairs for a good 7 minutes. Thank God we had that corrupted daughter there. Now, I've seen a lot of varying opinions online about the final fight with Suffering, most of which were negative. And while understandable, I for one somewhat enjoyed the challenge of it. Each boss up until now had a sort of strategy to it. The Surgeon, you just needed Soul Slingers, I see counted all melee attacks. The Deacon, I still have no idea how this guy works. For the maid, it's almost like a dance. They'd give you a setup and you'd have to work yourself around that. Then, for the child, you just had to time up when he would teleport, while also keeping your daughters within a certain range so he couldn't hit them from afar. Suffering's fight, to an extent, isn't much different. All you need to do is figure out the counter. Sent back to the beginning, I now set about grinding our daughters up to level 15 and max them out. Upon hitting 15, they're all given their final ability, and Scythe Dancers have this absolutely crazy one that can literally clear the board in a single attack. I like this ability a lot. During this grind, I decided to give Suffering another shot. Dealing with all those initial daughters became so much easier once you could just nuke them all in one attack. Through trial and error, we squared off against Suffering once more, this time in an attempt to get a game plan to defeat them once and for all. At least, I say that now. At the time, I really just wanted them dead, but still just couldn't quite get there. This defeat stung, too. Like, just one more turn from Sincere would have been enough, and just look at how close they were to moving. I swear, I'm not still mad about this one. Not at all. Though we'd lost, I now had a plan. Confident that this was the fight we'd finally defeat them, we started from the very beginning, facing each and every boss in succession in order to get the achievement for defeating every single boss in one recollection. It's wild how much easier they all are once you have level 15 daughters. Like, the lyrics in the Surgeon's music didn't even have the chance to start up. One by one, the bosses fell, leaving one final confrontation with Suffering. This was it. This was the one. Once again, deleting all the daughters at the start. We quickly went about forming a circle around Suffering, bullying them for their lunch money. Just as they started the hatching process, it was time to get everyone into position. Prudence, our tank, was to stand in the far back, as Suffering always teleports to the furthest daughter. They were to take all the ordeal hits, while the others focused upon attacking. All the others, then, got spaced out in such a way that none of them were in a straight line from each other, as there's an attack that emits beams from every daughter in an X formation. Now, all that was left was to continually interrupt Suffering when we could, getting in whatever damage possible in between turns. After a certain point, they enter their second phase, pushing themselves to the front of the timeline again. Now, for part 2 of our plan. Soul Slingers are able to haste your other daughters, pushing them up within the timeline. As Suffering has a melee interrupt, it's almost necessary for all your daughters to act at once. All we needed was one single window where all our daughters acted before Suffering. And we got exactly that. With everyone perfectly lined up, we gave it everything we had, bursting Suffering down. One attack after another, Suffering's health drained. All we could do was hope that this window was enough. And to our benefit, it was more than enough. Suffering was going to do everything they could to win, but Suffering can never win as long as hope lives.
Suffering has no end. Suffering cannot be defeated. I wanted nothing. Love. Compassion. No. Only to exist. If I cease, then so does this flooded world. Nothing of me survives. Nothing remains.
Follow me, little one. Join me with memory.
Mother, will it hurt?
My dear heart, let the time of suffering pass into memory. Together, we are free.
Is this really the end, Mother? How long are we going to sleep? I'm shivering.
Something's not right.
Fear. It's called fear, little one.
And that was Othercide, the game that has utterly consumed me for the past month ever since beating it. As for completing it 100%, thankfully, most of Othercide's achievements are progression-based, with only a few exceptions. Those being to finish the tutorial by killing all the enemies and finding all the lore bits. But in grinding for the suffering fight, I was easily able to get all of those. But wait, lore bits, what are those about? Well, these memories that you collect all throughout the game all come together to tell a story. A prequel of sorts to the game, as it follows Mother from her time as a child up until she heads for the city to save the child. Mother is the chosen one of an other named Memory. Though she didn't understand why, many from her village feared her for what she was. Her family defended her, and other kids didn't seem to understand why she was feared either. Eventually, her village was attacked by masked attackers, though she was able to escape. She had spent 3 days alone before she was found by somebody, introducing themselves as the guide. Once he had learned of her being a chosen one, though, he sent her to Nostra, saying it was best to hide in plain sight. Nostra being an order put together to presumably hunt down chosen ones like Mother. As she grew older, she headed to a temple in the mountains to train under her new master. The training was brutal, yet Mother endured, facing the trials head-on without ever looking back. Just as her mother had told her to all those years before in the attack. Her training continued until they were attacked by nightmarish creatures. Cornered, she began to hear the voice of Memory once again as it urged her to let them help. Seized by fear, she allowed it, revealing her identity as a chosen one to her master. Mother was then exiled from the temple. In the years she spent away, she was now becoming accustomed to Memory's voice, never truly feeling alone anymore within their company. Eventually, she returned to the temple, hoping her master would accept her once again. Together, they once again fought against the monsters, though Mother wondered how thankful those she saved would still be if they knew who she truly was. Her master soon received a letter, giving them a mission that she wouldn't disclose to Mother, as a blade does not question the hand that wields it. It merely acts. The mission in question was to kill a chosen one nearby. Faced with this chosen one, merely a little boy, her master ordered Mother to stand down, but she refused, turning her sword upon her master to save the child. She returned alone, telling them all that the chosen one had killed her master. Afterwards, she took up her master's position, taking on students of her own at the temple. The guilt of killing her master continued to weigh upon her in the years following, like a dull ache growing within her chest. How could she feel such sorrow when she was the one who had cut her master down? Memory tried to soothe her, but nothing could combat the hollowness she now felt. One day, a woman entered the temple, who Memory shows Mother to be the guide. The guide warns her that a war is brewing in the east, and Nostra has sent a call to arms. Nostra suspected an Other was involved in this Khanian war, given the terrors spoken of across the battlefields. Mother believes that her forgiveness can finally be found upon the battlefield. By now, Mother has sort of made a name for herself as the Huntress Blade, one of the finest warriors to walk the earth. Along with other knights, they pushed back into the Khan Empire, seeing that they'd killed their own civilians, leaving them torn and hung around in their own villages. All throughout, the Khan's warriors all had eyes black like the void. As they reached the Khan, a tear in the veil formed. Mother was about to use Memory's power, but an unknown knight struck down the Khan from behind. In this moment, she ran. Throughout this campaign, Mother had come to love a paladin. At first, she'd all but ignored him, but now they'd owned a small farm together. Though they'd tried to have kids of their own, each and every one died as her body rejected them. It wasn't until she was able to form daughters from her own memories that she was able to finally have children of her own. As time went on, her beloved paladin died of old age. With all these painful memories stacking up, she'd burned all of these memories of the past, wishing to set them free as they'd weighed upon her like lead. Though thankful to have lived the memories, they only made her fall further into despair. With the paladin's shield upon her back, she leaves the burning farm, setting those memories free. Mother wandered the earth until there was nothing left to see, each step retracing ones she had already taken. Again, she meets the guide as the two talk as if they were family, which, being connected to others, they might as well be. The guide is glad that someone's out dealing with the abominations of the world, though they say that Nostra has since changed, now with the new branch known as Vostra. Guys, they're completely different now, I swear. Vostra is looking to end the struggle with the Chosen Ones. In completing bounties, Mother is soon able to get the attention of Vostra and is invited to join, to which she joined a group that included herself, a medium, and a bounty hunter who'd she become envious of his use of pistols. Together, they searched for other Chosen Ones, offering them safety in Vostra. Even with trying to ease tensions, the bounty hunter found the Chosen Ones disgusting, as it's easier to kill them than it is to talk to them. One night, the medium finds out about Memory, but before there's even a chance to speak, they'd wiped the revelation from his mind. Mother then had to continually make them forget, night after night, until eventually she forgot, and he ultimately remembered but kept her identity a secret, just so long as she didn't make him forget again. He wished to use his power to look into the veil with Memory's help, to get just a glimpse of unreality. They tried, and though only a second had passed, it seemed as if the medium had aged years with everything that he'd seen. They'd never quite been able to look Mother in the eyes after that. Soon, they found one of the children that they'd saved with this big scar across his face, his eyes no longer matching. He'd escaped Vostra, and upon hearing this, they'd headed straight there to get answers. They quickly found just what the Chosen Ones were being used for. All this time, they'd been stitched and melded together into this amalgamation. They'd hoped to open a gate to unreality to rid themselves of the monsters, destroying them at the source. Mother, disgusted by this, killed them all. Before killing the amalgamation as well, she took their memories away as a mercy so they could pass in bliss. The medium then warned Mother of an other that would eventually break the veil. That suffering is coming, and there's nothing that they can do to stop it. Leaving, she finds the guide once more, who also sees something upon the horizon. To the west, the veil was thinning, and the guide confirmed that suffering was on the horizon. Memory begins to worry about Mother, wishing for her to take a break. She allows herself a moment to rest, letting memories play out within her mind. Memory believes that they are the reason for Mother's suffering. But as Mother states, had you not chosen me, my life would still have been filled with sorrow and joy. With you at my side, I've been given the chance to fight, to keep on going until both I and others may experience more joy than grief, and for that, I will always thank you. The guide reveals themselves to be Curiosity, who wonders what would become of Mother at the end of the world. Mother reaches the city, one corrupted by plague and set upon by twisted creatures. She walked the streets, striking down more and more of these beasts that looked more human than any she'd ever faced before. Eventually, Mother's body began to give out as she collapsed in the tunnels beneath the city. Memory tried to stir her with the voices of those she loved in the past, but her exhaustion takes her regardless. From the darkness around her, the form of her beloved paladin appears, then her master, continuing on through all the voices she's come to know and love. Though grateful that they're offering her some peace, she knows that none of these are real. In an effort to help Mother recover, Memory offers that the two merge, just as Curiosity and the Khan had. Mother reawakens, feeling lighter now that there was only one entity occupying her body and mind rather than two. United, they fight their way to the church where they found the child. Perhaps, if she were to save this child, it would make up for all those that she'd condemned to Vostra before. He sat himself upon the steps and screamed, tearing holes in the void and destroying reality. In her final moments, she'd only wished that she could see her dear friend Memory one last time. In the final remembrance for defeating suffering, we also come to learn that Mother's name is Lily. The last thing of note is that aside from all the whites, grays, blacks, and reds, there's still one other color that makes an appearance in Othercide. Yellow. Appearing only within one's eyes, I have a theory as to what this yellow could represent, and that's fear. In Mother's story, fear is an emotion that's brought up often, perhaps even further pushed by Mother's eyes being this golden yellow color as well. No matter where she was, there was always something to fear. In her village, it was the raiders. At Nostra, the fear of being found out. With Vostra, the fear of being too late to save the other chosen ones. It's only once she'd merged with Memory that her eyes are covered up. Perhaps as a way to hide the fear within her eyes. To give off this confident facade in the face of annihilation. But even so, this same fear still manifested itself within all of her daughters, as their eyes too are yellow. And now, that is truly the end. There's honestly so much more that we could dive into, involving the symbolism of various things like the enemies, the lyrics of the songs throughout the game, but I am definitely not that person. I'm just here to enjoy the game, and I absolutely loved my time with Othercide. Though frustrating at times, I had come to love the difficulty of it all, where several mistakes could snowball into deaths, and where each encounter is just another puzzle to be solved. While I'd definitely recommend this game to others, I also realize this isn't everyone's cup of tea. Even though I have all of this praise for the game now, there's still the fact that originally I had played this game up until the Maid and set it down for 3 years. It's a struggle, but one that I've come to appreciate. With another game checked off from the library, it's now time for us to find another. Just as I'm working to clear my library, I'd like to extend the challenge out to you as well. To take a step back and look through the games that have been neglected throughout the years. Who knows? You might just find something amazing. With that, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again. Okay, it's good enough. The first one was this is fine. Let's just keep going.